Imagine you have access to billions of dollars at your fingertips. Your employer has been entrusted with this money to grow it, slowly and steadily. You could simply do your middle office job, work diligently and adhere to the bank's internal risk management guidelines. Or you could take control of these funds and ape them into highly risky futures options, potentially making billions in the process. Which option do you choose? Ask yourself. It'll reveal more about yourself than you might be comfortable realizing.
It's one of history's biggest ever trading scandals. Losses of nearly $7 billion.
At some points, Jérôme nets over $1 billion from his rope trading activities, but then it all goes downhill. How is it possible for one trader to outsmart an entire bank, and what does it reveal about the financial system we are living in today?
He exceeded his limits because there's no way, since night follows day, that somebody of that limited experience, clever bloke though he was, would have been allowed to trade up to $42 billion without management control. And if management had known about it, they would have jumped on him.
Jérôme Kerviel was born and raised as a clever bloke in a modest, working-class family in France. He grows up in a small town and experiences a typical French upbringing. Conclusively, his life must have looked something like this: eating French cheese, walking around with a baguette under his arm, and placing the occasional highly leveraged put option. His academic journey leads him to the University of Nantes, where he studies finance.
While most of his peers graduated from elite schools, Kerviel entered Société Générale after attending State University.
Jérôme isn't a standard student. He is neither exceptionally brilliant nor struggling. He is, as many would describe, a solidly average student. Solidly average. But his determination sees him through, and he earned a master's in finance in organization and control of financial markets. This is a university program that is intended to prepare students for middle and back office positions in the trading departments of financial institutions. So here's the deal. Front office, obvious what this is. It's where the money is made. M&A, trading, all the good stuff. Back office, anything that's not front office. Middle office, that's a term coined by a subset of back office people to make themselves feel better. So honestly, nobody sane would pursue middle or back office as a career goal. Thus, we need to question whether he even knows what he's doing, or if he already has a grand plan back then to use middle office structures to rope trade billions. In 2000, fresh out of his master's program, Jérôme Kerviel joined Société Générale, or SocGen for short. SocGen is one of France's banking giants, similar to JP Morgan or Bank of America in the US. I mean, you'd always take an offer by the big three, GS, JPM and Morgan Stanley over SocGen, even in Europe. But that's mostly due to prestige reasons. The learnings are very comparable. SocGen offers a broad spectrum of banking services, from retail to investment banking. Or as a WSO user puts it, after a user asked whether to stay clear of SocGen.
Shit, it's far better than nothing.
Jérôme's first role at Société Générale is in the middle office, focusing on compliance work. His responsibilities include verifying trades and ensuring that all front office activities follow governmental and internal regulations. The problem is, this middle office stuff can get super boring sometimes. Essentially, the front office sells the products to clients. Middle office does the ancillary items in support of the sale. So for example, reconciliation of records, compliance and controls. Back office supports the underlying development of the product. So for example, budgeting, resource management, developing or maintaining systems, all of that stuff. So yes, the middle office role is crucial in maintaining the bank's operations, but it's not really where you can make a lot of money as a banking employee. In order to profit financially in an organization, you always want to make sure to position yourself as closely as possible with profit-generating centers. Or as another a rogue trader legend puts it,
it is an industry that is built around success. The more success you have, the more money that you make, the more prominent you become within the organization. But we all go into that with our eyes open. That's what we want. That's what the industry is about. It's about making money and trying to make more money than anybody else.
In this middle office position, Jérôme ensures that all traders correctly book their trades into the computer systems. These entries are vital as they feed into the bank's accounting and risk management frameworks. By 2005, Kerviel's career takes a significant turn. He's promoted and joins the Delta One products team in Paris as a junior trader. The role is mundane at its best. It involves arbitrage of price differences between identical stock market indexes. Essentially, he trades futures against forwards, an order entry and functionary role that, on the surface, seems quite dull. Beneath the surface, it's also quite dull. But it puts Jérôme at the heart of the bank's trading operations. Despite the mundane nature of the job, he gains the experience and access that later enable his rogue trading activities.
Kerviel was always perceived as an outsider. He's been called a megalomaniac, a genius hacker, a high-risk player mourning the death of his father. But Jérôme Kerviel says he's just an average guy, solely motivated by making gains for his bank, and that his hierarchy gave him free rein.
Jérôme Kerviel starts his unauthorized trading in 2006. SocGen states that Kerviel was assigned to arbitrage discrepancies between equity derivatives and cash equity prices, and began creating the fictitious trades in late 2006 and early 2007, but that these transactions were relatively small. The fake trading increased in frequency and in size. Initially, he keeps the trade small, but gradually he escalates his actions. He knows the ins and outs of the middle office. This enables him to hide his trades from supervisors. This knowledge comes in handy as he takes bigger and bigger risks. Kerviel is careful though to close the trades in just 2 or 3 days, just before the trade's timed controls would trigger notice from the bank's internal control system. And Kerviel then shifts those older positions to newly initiated trades.
Simply speaking, when I would stand to gain 100, I would post a loss of 100 in virtual trade.
Kerviel's tactics to hide his activities involve more than just exploiting his middle office knowledge. He tells superiors that large trades are mistakes, only to re-establish similar positions later. He allegedly fakes emails to divert attention away from himself. SocGen managers later describe some of the means Kerviel employs to avoid the bank's internal controls and escape detection. Executive Chairman Daniel Boughton describes the pattern as like a mutating virus in which hundreds of thousands of trades were hidden behind offsetting, faked hedge trades.
I'm trying to get an idea of what would inspire an individual trader to take on so many more risks than perhaps he has to.
As I said before, I don't think you start doing it intentionally. It's a very perverse situation. You break the rule initially, you make a loss, you try to cover that up, you try to hide it. Over a period of time, you realize that the systems and controls aren't in place to stop you. And perversely, you continue to trade, take on more risks to try and get those losses back. It then becomes apparent there's even less systems and controls than you initially thought, and you continue to go.
Kerviel's trading activities soon become audacious. By 2007, he is making billion-dollar trades, exceeding his authority as a junior trader. These trades are kept under the radar by being closed just before internal systems flag them. He bets heavily on the market downturn, and as the financial crisis begins to unfold, his bearish positions pay off. And here's how. He uses futures contracts to increase his leverage on his bets. Futures contracts are financial derivatives whereby a trader can get 100% of the exposure to a stock or underlying security, but not have to put up the capital of actually buying the security. Using these derivatives, Jérôme is placing tens of billions of dollars of his company's money at risk, and it's working until now. By late 2007, he is net short on the market, betting that stock prices will drop. This strategy works, and his trades bring in massive profits. By early 2008, his trades have netted Société Générale over $1 billion. However, this success brings unwanted attention. Kerviel, realizing the danger of his profits drawing scrutiny, tries to moderate his trades. He places long bets on the market to balance his previous gains, hoping to reduce his account's visibility.
With the subprime crisis looming, Kerviel placed an unauthorized €30 billion bet on rising markets. He lost.
Unfortunately, the market crash accelerates in 2008. The Dow Jones Industrial Average falls nearly 20%, and in one day alone, the Dow drops 778 points, the largest point decline in its history at that time. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq also experienced significant drops. Kerviel's attempt to dial back his profits backfires, leading to massive losses for the bank.
On January 24, 2008, the CEO of France's second biggest bank, Société Générale, announced a record loss of €4,900,000,000.
The losses from Kerviel's trades total over $7 billion, amounting to roughly 10% of SocGen's market cap. Additionally, the bank faces $3 billion in accelerating credit losses. And this is a problem because it forces the bank to seek outside capital from investors.
We discovered a completely hidden position and saw that it had an irregularity. The position wasn't included in our account books, but it was still within the frame of our market activities.
Next, everything happens very fast.
For the French bank, a young trader was to blame. Jérôme Kerviel became a household name overnight. Even the French parliament got involved in his alleged actions.
The French government is following this situation very closely.
Kerviel was indicted 4 days later. The 30-something golden boy from Brittany became the enfant terrible of the investment banking world.
But what if this is just half the truth? What if Jérôme is not the culprit, but the victim?
Running for the story. The first day of Jérôme Kerviel's trial provoked a media scrum. It took the former Société Générale trader and his lawyer 15 minutes to get into the courtroom. 91 different news outlets have been accredited to cover the long-awaited trial, a third of them from outside of France. The eyes of the world are on the rogue trader who in 2008 cost the French bank Société Générale nearly €5 billion by making risky bets.
When the unauthorized trades come to light, the market reacts violently. On January 21, 2008, as the US markets are closed for Martin Luther King Day, a trader at Société Générale is tasked with unwinding Kerviel's positions. The lack of liquidity on this quiet trading day exacerbates the market impact. The FTSE suffers its biggest one-day points fall, and European stocks close with some of their worst results since 9/11. Asian markets drop as much as 15%. The S&P 500 futures hit their limit down. In response, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke at this time holds an emergency meeting and announces significant interest rate cut. And there's discussions around whose fault all of this really is. The French press suggests that Kerviel's bosses pressured him into making these huge trades. While this narrative gains some traction, many find it unbelievable that a junior trader would be trusted with such massive bets. One of Kerviel's bosses even refers to him as not one of our stars. That's not really something you want to hear from your employer, but it highlights his relatively beta status within the firm. The fallout from Jérôme Kerviel's rogue trading activities is swift and severe. After 48 hours of intense police questioning, authorities charge him with abuse of confidence and illegal access to computers. 2.5 years later, a court finds him guilty. The verdict includes a 5-year prison sentence and an order to repay Société Générale a staggering $6.7 billion. Not sure how this has been going for him, to be honest. This must have also been questioned by the judges, who cut his fine. French judges said Jérôme Kerviel must pay Société Générale €1 million, a fraction of the initial €4.9 billion trading loss he caused more than 8 years ago. The reason? Société Générale's multiple faults mean the bank had a major and decisive role in allowing the incident. And this is not just one of the important hints in this drama. The aftermath really raises many questions. Critics argue that it's implausible for the bank to have been completely unaware of Kerviel's massive trades. They say that a pattern of closing out trades within the 3-day cycle alleged could not be accomplished given the big sums involved. Some believe the bank might have turned a blind eye due to the enormous profits his trades initially generated. In 2008, French finance minister Christine Lagarde Yard leads an investigation into the bank's role in the scandal. Her findings reveal that Société Générale failed to implement adequate controls despite previous warnings to strengthen their operational security.
It's incomprehensible. It's a judgment that says he alone was responsible for everything. It's a judgment that says that a bank that he helped create, that he built, was responsible for nothing, even though it acted with negligence.
Critics, obviously including Kerviel's lawyers, claim the bank knew about the trades and allowed them to continue, using Kerviel as a scapegoat when things went south. The theory that Kerviel acted alone seems far-fetched. His superiors stood to gain significant bonuses from the trading profits. The idea that a junior trader would be allowed to place bets larger than the bank's market cap without oversight defies logic.
In a book published earlier this year, Jérôme Kerviel claims he was not the only one at Société Générale taking huge risks. He said the bank tacitly accepted these practices and claimed he fell out of favor only when his profits turned into losses.
In 2010, Kerviel is sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 2 years suspended. He also faces a permanent ban from working in the financial services industry. Despite his conviction, Kerviel manages to win an unfair dismissal case against Société Générale in 2016. The outcome is puzzling, given his ban from the securities industry, but French law allows him this victory. Kerviel ultimately spends only 5 months in prison. The rest of his sentence is converted to house arrest with an electronic bracelet. By the way, Kerviel is not thought to have profited personally from the suspicious trades. Prosecutors say Kerviel has been cooperative with the investigation and has told them his actions were also practiced by other traders in SocGen. Kerviel admits to exceeding his credit limits, but claims he was working to increase bank profits. He told authorities that the bank was happy with his previous year's performance and was expecting to be paid a $300,000 bonus on a 60 million declared profit, so around 0.5%. If you think about it for a bit longer, this guy is a very small part of a very big system.
Well, you have to understand how the banking business works these days. It's organized like a drug cartel, and Kerviel is just like a street corner drug dealer that got busted. All the layers that protect the street dealers from the management are in place, and meanwhile the senior management, the chairman, the CEO should be in jail. They should be facing justice. They're part of a criminal racket dealing in derivatives and counterfeit securities.
Do you think he's been made a scapegoat for the banking system as a whole?
Well, again, using the drug cartel and the drug business model, the cops can say, or the regulators can say, oh, we got one of the bad guys, but the big fish are let free. So they just put a very small fish behind bars, and they let the big criminals, the CEO, chairman, board of directors of SocGen, those guys, the derivative lords, are allowed to go free, even though they should be in jail, if not worse.
Then again, even a guy who bankrupted an entire bank, the rogue trader of rogue traders, says that Jérôme is guilty.
Yourself, one of the former rogue traders, you're responsible for the bankruptcy of Barings Bank back in 1995 when you lost 1.3 billion. Now, Kerviel's losses were 4 times greater than that. Does it surprise you?
Look, I was personally astounded when it happened. Growing up in the derivatives markets through the early 90s, Société Générale were always at the cutting edge of the derivatives market. So, you know, everybody held them in great esteem. And for something like this to happen to them was a shock to me. I'm sure that everybody expects me to side with Jérôme Kerviel. The opposite is true. I mean, you have to take responsibility for your actions. He traded illegally outside of his position limit and he got his just desserts.
In any case, Jérôme found another way to monetize his life.
Jérôme Kerviel, 37 ans. Je suis un ancien trader. Aujourd'hui, je combats le système et j'essaie de me défendre pour prouver que je suis innocent de ce dont je suis accusé, à savoir un abus de confiance.
He has used his fame to turn against his former bosses and crusade against the ills of the financial world. Jérôme has sought to portray himself as a victim of a corrupt banking system and published a book in 2007 whose title translates roughly as The Gears, Memoirs of a Trader. Casting himself as a victim of a corrupt financial system has won Kerviel's support over the years from people with backgrounds as varied as priests and left-wing politicians. In the early days, he inspired a comic book and a fan club and features on t-shirts. The Outsider, a movie dramatizing his account of the events, hit French cinemas to mostly positive reviews. Kerviel, who suffers from phobias and panic attacks, said he can't bring himself to watch the entire film because it brings back bad memories. So, culprit or victim? Who gives a fuck as long as you can monetize your situation?